Listen to what this professor had to say.
Do you not think the continued interference of countries in the West, Europe, the United States, as you mentioned, a lot of money was raised in London to support Cyril Ramaphosa's candidature. Surely that was not for nothing. It was so that you are backing someone who would then basically be at the forefront of promoting Europe's position and their foreign policy position on what South Africa ought to be doing, as opposed to what may be best for South Africans. And, do you not think that is problematic, Professor?
Well, you put it you put your finger on the wound. Yes, of course. Our friends in Europe have not always served this country well, and we carried on with the energy transition, while about 60% of the global warming goes on the account of the United States and Europe, and our contribution here in South Africa is a mere 2%. We were forced, we were pushed, our politicians were basically bribed with enormous promises and large amounts of money to switch out perfectly well-functioning power stations and to throw this country into an energy emergency. This was actually not our making. So yes, the interests of Europe and the interests of the United States aren't always coinciding with the need for South Africans to see progress and to develop and to have better opportunities.
The professor deals with a question I've often asked myself. Why is the pressure to do just energy transition being placed on Africa? Why Africa, right? Let's really examine this right now, right? Who must start with the just energy transition? Should it be Africa or should it be Europe and America? Let's examine this. Europe and America are the ones that created the climate emergency. They created the emergency. And for the last 150 to 200 years, they are the ones who have been using coal and oil to facilitate their industrialization, along with colonization to get cheap raw materials from Africa. So right now, they are still the largest contributors to global carbon emissions. Europe, America, China are the largest contributors. So if you created the problem and are still contributing the most to the problem, why does the burden to solve the problem rest on African countries? It surely can't rest on African countries. It has to rest on you. And that's why that professor was saying that something funny happened when African leaders bought into this narrative, and when South African leaders started pushing for solar, for wind, and actually created an energy emergency in South Africa. That's what he's saying. He's saying the level 5, 6, 7, 8 load shedding is as a result of wrong policy strategy being taken by African leaders because they were given money by Europe. And we heard what Andre de Ruyter said. Some people were saying that you need to loosen how you're dealing with this $8.5 billion US so that other people can eat. I don't know whether he was telling the truth or not, but if you start connecting what witnesses are saying, what does it lead to? It's hypocritical to say to Africa, right, give us your coal so that we can keep our houses warm, so that we can keep our factories running. But you, Africa, get off coal. You, Africa, you need to move to wind and solar. How? You taking our coal right now, today. I think that hypocrisy shows that the motives are not pure, and that, in fact, this is not going to be in our best interest. Finally, what does Africa need right now? Right? Africa still needs to industrialize. South Africa is considered to be Africa's most industrialized country. But did you know that manufacturing right now of textiles is only 4% of manufacturing output? Textiles, fabrics. The fabrics are not coming from South Africa. Furniture in South Africa, the manufacturing of furniture only is 4% of manufacturing output. Textiles 4%, furniture 4%. Electronic equipment is only 3%. So that's how behind South Africa is in terms of the manufacturing outputs that it needs. And that's why manufacturing only contributes about 13% to the GDP. And it should contribute so much more. And if you had more manufacturing, you'd have more employment. These things are connected. So in order for Africa to industrialize, Africa needs cheap energy, right? In order to be able to get that cheap energy, Africa needs to have cheap energy sources. What is the cheap energy source that many African countries have? It's coal. It's coal. Coal is the cheap energy source. So how can you be taking Africa's cheap energy source while at the same time telling Africa they need to get off that energy source? There's a hypocrisy there. And I think this professor has exposed the whole game. And we have to be thinking, as Africans, is this in our interests? I don't think it is.